1-0 here.
November 1st, 1986. Opening night at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks had their savior, Rookie of the Year Patrick Ewing. All signs pointed to him becoming the next generational player in the NBA. That's why New York believed the Garden was his house. Impenetrable with its new paint monster. But on that night, Michael Jordan broke in, dropped 50 points, and turned the building upside down. Still no Pippen. Still no Phil Jackson. No threes. Just massive destruction. And if you think this was just one brilliant night, it was the first brushstroke of a decade-long masterpiece, Jordan versus Ewing. The year is 1986. The NBA is changing faster than ever. Magic and Bird still rule the league, but a new wave is rising. Patrick Ewing, as I said, was the Knicks' future. Drafted number 1 overall, the franchise and the city believed he'd bring titles back to New York. Behind him, veterans like Bill Cartwright, Rory Sparrow, and Gerald Wilkins filled out the roster, with Hubie Brown coaching a squad built on toughness and defense. But across from them stood a young Michael Jordan. He looked like the truth. Michael was so good that even after missing his entire sophomore season due to a foot injury, expectations remained sky high. He was about to lead the league in scoring at 37.1 points per game, but critics would still call him selfish, flashy, a highlight reel that couldn't win. That night at MSG, Jordan made them eat those words. The rivalry between Michael and Patrick Ewing didn't begin in '86. It came from much earlier. In 1982, a freshman Jordan hit the game winner over Ewing's Georgetown Hoyas in the NCAA championship. MJ later said, "That shot made me Michael Jordan." But that college rivalry carried over to the NBA. Both Jordan and Ewing were considered two of the best young basketball players in the world. Two players of the same era who, although they didn't know it yet, would star in some of the most epic battles of the Eastern Conference playoffs. They had landed on two teams that owned huge markets but had not been dominant for a long time, so the spotlight was on them. They were the answer, the salvation of the NBA. The hype surrounding Jordan had multiplied a few months earlier, because in the 1986 playoffs, after missing the entire regular season, MJ dropped 63 points on Larry Bird's Boston Celtics, a team that everyone considered unbeatable at the time. But that was all for naught. Even though the MVP Bird said Jordan was God disguised as a basketball player, the Bulls fell hard to Boston in 3 games, which led people to wonder, is his game really effective? Does it help win? Well, the first chance he had to prove it the following season against the Knicks, people would have their answer. November 1st, 1986, Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball in downtown Manhattan, was packed. There wasn't a single empty seat in the stands, but that was for a reason. What the fans were going to see that night was going to be NBA history. And when the referee tossed up the ball at the tip-off, the die was cast. It was time for Michael Jordan to prove that he was not only ahead of Ewing, but also that his game led to victories. In just 3 seconds of play, he made that clear. Because after swatting the layup by Gerald Wilkins, he set the tone for the rest of the night. In fact, it wasn't just one block. Less than a minute into the game, MJ blocked his future teammate, Bill Cartwright, on the Knicks' second possession of the night. The Bulls came out with tremendous intensity on the defensive end, which allowed them to get out in transition throughout the first quarter. This play is a good example, with Michael finding Charles Oakley for an easy bucket. But it wouldn't be long before MJ would get started in the scoring department. Just as Jordan had fed Oakley moments earlier, this time it was the big man who found Michael with an accurate pass, which the guard was able to convert thanks to a ridiculous circus layup. While Jordan's defense remained aggressive, allowing him to continue to dominate the game, he was also warming up on offense. In fact, on this play, Michael didn't even have to let go of the ball for a second to achieve another incredible double-clutch layup after the steal. That night, for some reason, Jordan felt tremendously creative under and over the rim, because moments later, he would knock down yet another crafty finish. It seemed that, in a way, Jordan was trying out new moves. But despite that, MJ hadn't managed to drain his typical mid-range shots. This was an aspect that, early in his career, was of great importance in his game. For that reason, the Bulls lost the second quarter by a margin of 8 points. Chicago's good collective defense in the first quarter, led by Jordan and his rim protection, had allowed them to stay in the game. But if Michael couldn't take over the game, those young but dangerous Knicks would be capable of anything. Jordan had to step up to silence all his critics. So, from the start of the third quarter, the tone of the game changed completely, at least on the offensive side. Jordan began to gain confidence to shoot from his spots again. Receiving the ball in the low block against Gerald Wilkins, MJ knew he had the advantage. But the incredible thing is that even with the arrival of the second defender, Jordan was able to knock down the turnaround jumper. That confidence was immediately apparent, with Michael attempting an almost impossible fadeaway from 14 feet that he was unable to convert. However, he went after the rebound like a madman, just before catching it and resolving the situation with yet another beautiful reverse layup. But in addition to cleaning up the offensive glass, Michael was also cleaning up the defensive glass. His coast-to-coast transitions were becoming an essential part of his unstoppable offense. Because in transition, he just was completely unstoppable. Look how, once again, Jordan is able to resolve the play with the finger roll. It seemed like Michael was competing in a jelly contest that night, against himself. However, the Knicks were extremely aware of his threat, and in plays like this, they took advantage of his misses to quickly convert points in transition. This time, thanks to the layup by 6-year veteran guard Rory Sparrow. In addition, Patrick Ewing was already showing out his great court vision to take advantage of his own gravity, a step that all future superstars had to go through. In Chicago, Michael had no one capable of generating those advantages. Or wait, maybe he did. Because look at the absolute dime that Charles Oakley throws to Michael Jordan under the rim, a pass worthy of Magic Johnson himself. In addition, with only 1 second left on the clock in the third quarter, Jordan receives the ball and is able to knock down the buzzer beater from mid-range after a great move without the ball to receive the rock. No, with everything still to be decided, the best of the game would come in the fourth quarter. So Michael Jordan was the first to break the ice for Chicago. That night, it didn't matter who was under the basket, because MJ's aerial superiority was worthy of a war museum, a masterclass that no one could emulate. Plus, at that point in the night, his mid-range was already firing on all cylinders. Check out the incredible bucket he's able to knock down in Trent Tucker's face. When Michael went right, it looked like he was out of options. But the Knicks defense forgot that there was no shot difficult enough for Jordan to drain. But every time MJ tried to increase the lead, Patrick Ewing showed why he was the future of the Knicks. As soon as clutch time arrived, he too had stepped up, because he was having a rough night. And now, in the fourth, he was competing head-to-head against Jordan. Or, well, at least trying to. Because Jordan, every time he got the ball, only needed a second to turn it into 2 points. Look at how easily he posts up from the right block, just to shoot an incredible hook over his defender, Trent Tucker. And most importantly, just as he did in the first quarter, Michael became the best version of himself on defense. Look at this play. Pat Cummings receives the ball near the rim in what looks like it'll be an easy hook shot. But what the Knicks big man least expected was that MJ would appear out of nowhere to swat his shot into the stands. Despite being only 6'6", Jordan continued to prove that he was a player who played well above his size, having an incredible impact on both sides of the court. But there was Ewing, who once again from the low post was able to take advantage of second chance points for the Knicks. Meanwhile, Jordan continued to create his own looks. Whether in the paint or in the mid-range, he was able to find the space that allowed him to shoot over his defender. Trent Tucker could only watch helplessly as this unfolded, and logically, the Bulls looked for him more and more often. Every time he drove, the entire Knicks defense collapsed, allowing Jordan to find his teammates in good positions, as in this play where he finds Earl Cureton just under the rim. With the game tied and little time left to play, MJ received the ball again on the right wing. But what happened next is simply surreal. He drives, seems to lose his balance, and decides to shoot over his defender with a fadeaway. That's when he surprises everyone by banking a difficult high-arching shot from 14 feet out. Moments later, Michael extends the narrow lead with an alley-oop pass from Steve Coulter, a basket that comes with less than a minute left on the clock. But the dagger would come a few seconds later. Because Jordan, he wasn't done yet. With this drive, in which he first beats Sparrow off the dribble, and then the entire Knicks front court, Michael breaks the hearts of all the fans at Madison Square Garden. Because with that basket, the game is completely decided. Michael Jordan had done it. That night at Madison Square Garden, Michael Jordan announced his takeover. No Scottie, no Phil, no threes. Just a young superstar coming off a broken foot, walking into New York and dropping 50 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, and 3 blocks on the center everyone thought was the future. He swatted shots, ripped steals, carried Chicago on his back, and left Patrick Ewing, the Knicks' crown jewel, on just 13 points. But that wasn't just a GOAT-level performance. It was also a message, the beginning of a rivalry that stretched from college heartbreak to brutal playoff wars. People said the Garden was Ewing's house, but after November 1st, 1986, it was clear Jordan owned it. Whether you lived through it or you're seeing it for the first time today, you have to know the importance of a rivalry that changed the Eastern Conference forever. Now, I want to hear from you. If you lived through the Jordan-Ewing battles, what moment still lives in your memory? Was it this night in '86, one of those playoff wars in the '90s, or just that feeling that no matter how loud New York cheered, Jordan always had the last word? And for new fans, imagine a player today dropping 50 in the Garden without a star teammate, without a three-point shot, fresh off an injury. That's why Jordan is different. Drop your story in the comments. Let's keep the rivalry alive. And if you love legendary breakdowns, epic rivalries, and the moments that made basketball history, subscribe to First 5 Hoops and be part of a community that lives for the game. Because this isn't just basketball history we're telling. This is just the beginning.